Beets are amazing, but relatively unheralded root crop. Often taking a back seat to carrots and potatoes, beets more than deserve their place at the table. The great thing about this versatile crop, other than its edible leaves and delicious taproot, is that it's quite easy to grow, even in containers. So join me in part 1 of a 2-part series where I show you how to grow the amazing beet in a container setup, and it starts right now. Our first step for successful beet buckets is to prepare the bucket. If you're using a bucket without pre-drilled holes, you're going to want to make your own. Without proper drainage, a root crop like beets will quickly rot and fail. You're going to want to use a 3/16 or 1/4 inch drill bit and make around 8 to 10 holes. Any larger of hole diameter, and the soil often dribbles out when you water them, so be aware, especially if you're really concerned about the soil spilling out onto your patio or deck. And if you're still really concerned, you can simply line the bottom of your buckets with a few layers of newspaper. When you think about it, the newspaper actually acts like a coffee filter. It'll let that water pass through the bucket so that your plants don't rot, but it'll keep the soil in place. In a recent video, I explained how to reuse old potting mix. If you're looking for a place to deploy that strategy, beets are a prime candidate. I'll leave a link in the description below. Fill your buckets with your quality organic potting mix of choice to about 80% full. Tamp it down slightly to provide the best landing pad for those beet seeds, and we're almost ready to plant. Before we plant, let's soak that bucket with water from below. It's infinitely easier to wet that soil now before seeding than it is after. A couple of hours later, and it's time to plant. Beet seeds are quite unique in that most seeds are actually a cluster of seeds. As such, each of these seed balls often produces a clump of up to 4 to 5 beet plants. This knowledge is of course going to affect our beet seed spacing. Although, like carrots, they can easily be thinned down during the maintenance stage. Now, when I sow my beet buckets, I'm a little more diligent on the spacing than I am when I sow beets in a traditional garden bed or plot. I find that with the confined space of a bucket, even a large one, it's just easier to take a little bit more time and put a little bit more effort into the crop spacing. As a rule, I try for about 1 inch between each seed cluster. This has worked well over hundreds of beet buckets, so I rarely deviate from it. Once you're satisfied with your beet seed spacing, cover up those seeds with a 1 to 2 inch skim coating of that same potting mix. Be careful when adding the mix and spreading it around. You don't want to disturb the seeds below and mess with your spacing. Beet seeds germinate in as little as 5 to 10 days, and they're unmistakable with their bright red stems and lush green leaves. Beets in buckets. It's actually a thing. In the span of making part 1 of this series, my beets have already sprouted and they're on their way. Growing crops of container beets can actually be done quite a few times a year. Get yours started today, and when we next meet in part 2, we'll talk about the maintenance, thinning, and harvest of your beet buckets. Hey, thanks for watching, guys. If you're getting value in this and the other series that I'm doing on YouTube, hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons if you'd be so kind, and I'll see you in the next video.